Hey, Nick, do you want to hear a funny joke?
Absolutely.
What's the difference between lawyers and lab rats?
Oh, I don't know. What's the difference between lawyers and lab rats?
There are things rats will not do for money. So today we're going to have another episode on Dishonored. Yay.
Exciting stuff, man.
With our Dishonored specialist, Nick.
I'm a specialist. We got the brilliant strategist and the specialist.
Yes. And what we're going to talk about today are the 2 DLCs for Dishonored 1, which are...
Knife of Dunwall and the Brigmore Witches.
Exactly. So I think we're going to do a similar thing that we did last time, where we will sort of summarize the DLCs to give us a general background and a general story.
Sure.
So the first DLC in the first game is the Knife of Dunwall.
That's right, and Knife of Dunwall is kind of a nickname for Dowd. He's the world's most infamous assassin, and because he operates in Dunwall, everybody calls him the Knife of Dunwall. And he kills everybody with a knife. The Whalers are the band of assassins that he leads. And they all use these trademark sort of knives with all these ridges on the sides of them, and they're really long. And so that's why he's called the Knife of Dunwall, kind of his trademark weapon.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So basically, Dowd is the assassin who assassinated Jasmine, the Empress.
That's right. Yeah, to get a quick recap, Dowd was paid by the spy master to assassinate the Empress and kidnap her daughter Emily, who's the rightful heir to the throne. Of course, our hero Corvo took the blame, and all sorts of things ensue from that. But Dowd is feeling unusually guilty about this particular assassination. The first DLC takes up, I think, 6 months later. Corvo's already escaped and everything. And Dowd is feeling really guilty about this particular assassination. In the first mission, called None Like Her, he's just kind of talking to himself, as people often do in this game, for some reason.
Yeah.
He's like, I've assassinated plenty of nobles, each one more corrupt than the last one. So why should an empress be any different? But this one was different. It's got me feeling really bad. And then the Outsider, our resident supernatural entity and imparter of powers, shows up and says, yeah, Dowd, this one was different. There's going to be consequences, basically referring to the fact that Corvo's coming for him. Maybe the only man in the Empire more dangerous than Dowd at this point is Corvo, depending on your chaos level and stuff in the main game. But... So basically, the Outsider never says anything outright. Everything's couched in these sort of cryptic illusions. He's like, there will be consequences, but I'll give you one last gift. And he just gives him a name, Delilah. And so just about the whole DLC, you're trying to figure out who Delilah is. And so Dowd's like, well, what does Delilah mean? The Outsider offered no exposition. Well, Delilah is, this witch who was, just being called one stepsister and blah, 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 blah. She wants to take over everything. No, he just says Delilah. That's it. Go figure it out yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And Dowd actually has the Outsider's mark.
That's right. The Outsider is, I guess to just sum it up real quick, this supernatural entity who resides in the Void, and basically is the gatekeeper of the Void's magic. You find this stuff out really later on in Death of the Outsider, but just for context. And so the Outsider can impart his mark to anyone he wants. He very rarely does it. He gives it to Corvo, to Dowd, and to Delilah. And in the first game, those are the only 3 who have his mark that you encounter, as far as I know. And the mark basically gives you the ability to use black magic, which emanates from the Void. Dowd and Delilah, though, are a little bit unique in that they can impart their powers to their followers. And so Dowd's assassins can use his powers to a little bit lesser extent than he can, and the witches who follow Delilah can also use her powers to a limited extent. But as we'll come to see later, Delilah has some pretty unique abilities because she's an artiste.
Yes.
But yeah, so all Dowd knows at this point is that there's this name, Delilah, and it matters to his fate. Because he has this sense that something really ominous and bad is about to happen to him. He's trying to figure it out. So eventually his right-hand gal, Billy Lurk, I think is the one who finds out that there's this whaling ship called the Delilah, and it's docked at the Rothwild Slaughterhouse. And so Dowd's like, well, that's the only thing relating to anything named Delilah that I've found in these weeks I've been searching for. So I'm just going to go and check out this boat here and see what it's all about. Whaling ship. Of course, whaling, as you know, is kind of the foundation of the economy in the Empire. The way they treat these poor animals is brutal, but that...
Oh, it's so horrible.
Oh, I know. And it's really... You really see some gory stuff as you play through the mission. Which the second mission is called a Captain of Industry, and that's where you're trying to find out about this boat and where it came from and stuff. So you do a lot of breaking and entering, you do a lot of assault and battery, you do you do a lot of illegal things, even on low chaos.
Yeah, it's true.
But when you get there, though, you find out some interesting things. I actually made a lot of notes on this part of the game because the story is pretty tangled up. It's pretty straightforward after you complete this mission and the next one, but there's a lot of details in this mission and the next one. It's like once you get there, you find out that the industry that takes place at the slaughterhouse, which is anything having to do with whaling or processing whale oil, has been deemed an industry that's essential to state interests. And so much as failing to report to work is like a capital offense.
Whoa.
And it's certainly collective bargaining is a capital offense. Or I think one's a capital offense and one is punishable by just imprisonment, but I forget which one is which. But it's like if you so much as fail to report to work in this industry and some others, you can go to prison.
That's pretty intense.
Or be killed. Yeah. You find that the Rothwild Slaughterhouse, which owns Rothwild's whaling business, which owns the Rothwild Slaughterhouse, it's kind of got the backing of the City Watch, the local military. And so they're kind of working hand in glove with each other to maintain, order in the whaling plant. But despite all that, you come to find out that most of the workers in the Rothwild Slaughterhouse, where they slaughter whales, are on strike. Led by one Abigail Ames, who is the foreman there. She came on with the slaughterhouse. She rose to the rank of foreman, and then she agitated all the workers to strike. The only ones who didn't strike are the butchers, the ones who actually cut up these poor whales and treat them so horribly. The guy who owns just to kind of back up and give a little more context, the guy who owns the slaughterhouse is a guy named Bundry Rothwild, and he runs the whole place like a prison camp. You can't get in or out without a time card. The working conditions are really unsafe and brutal, and the pay is low. And you come to find out in one of the little notes you find that the workers have to lease most of their equipment, so a lot of the money goes back to Rothwild.
Yeah.
So it's like they're working under harsh, unsafe conditions, not making very much money, but the state is forcing them to stay on. Because whaling is a industry that's in the state interest. So the workers are on strike, except for the butchers. And the reason the butchers are loyal to Rothwild is the way he came up. It was pretty rough. His father died on a whaling ship, and his mother died working in a factory probably under unsafe conditions, similar to those he imposes on his own workers. And so he and his brother were left to kind of fend for themselves for a while on the brutal streets of Dunwall, until the overseers came and took his brother. Of course, the overseers are one half of the established religious order, the Abbey of the Everyman. And what they tend to do is they'll find young boys who kind of meet whatever requirements they have, and they'll kidnap them and put them through these trials of aptitude. And it all culminates in a big ceremony where it's chosen which boys will become overseers, who are kind of the military arm of the Abbey. And which ones will be put down. Yeah, that's actually what it says in the official little notes you find, is that which ones will go on to become overseers and which will be put down. His brother was apparently put down, unfortunately. Yeah. And so all that rage he channeled into whaling. He got on with the whaling ship, and he was a very brutal and efficient whaler. So he garnered the loyalty of his men. Eventually rose to own his own whaling ship, and then own his own whaling slaughterhouse, and became very wealthy and notorious because of it. Of course, he engaged in all sorts of corruption to get to where he got. Among them, he had dealings with Barrister Timsh, who at the time was the maritime barrister and decided who got whaling licenses and who didn't. And of course, we'll see Timsh again a little bit later on. So Rothwild's a pretty rough guy. And so he's running the place. And then led by Abigail Ames, these workers are striking, and so the City Watch is kind of cracking down, trying to maintain order. No one gets in or out of the slaughterhouse without a time card. So your first mission is basically to sneak. Like, you start out in sort of outside the perimeter of the warehouse. You have to get past the initial sort of perimeter to get on the warehouse grounds, and then from there, you have to find a time card or find some other way to get into the warehouse, because your ultimate mission is to interrogate Rothwild to figure out what he knows about the ship named Delilah, because he owns it. And so there are multiple ways to get into the warehouse. I think it's more fun to try to get a time card because you meet other people and do other things and get other rewards as you get a time card. There's one in a safe, and at the beginning of the mission, you can well, just to kind of back up, at the beginning of each mission, Dowd has this network of corrupt merchants, so you can purchase favors from them that will help you. One of which is you can purchase a code to the safe that's in one of the offices on the outskirts of the warehouse, and if you do that, the code will be in the time card will be in the safe. But I think it's more fun, though, to free the imprisoned workers, because somewhere on the somewhere on the warehouse grounds, like these two laborers are being imprisoned for, I don't know, they don't know what for. They probably didn't have to do anything at this point. They just
they were probably late for work.
Yeah,
one day.
That's just about all it takes. So the City Watch has locked them up. They're imprisoned behind a wall of light, which is a security device that zaps you if you. It's like a wall of electricity, and if it's configured to zap you, then it'll zap you and kill you if you walk past it. And so if you can manage to free them and disable the larger wall of light that safeguards the perimeter of the slaughterhouse, then they'll give you a time card to get in. Or you could sneak in. There are a couple of side entrances you could take to sneak into the warehouse as well. But I think it's more fun to explore the grounds and free the laborers and stuff. Of course, you can also pickpocket the time card from one of the workers, but if they see you, they'll alert the guards.
Yeah.
So I think it's just better and more humane to kind of help them out, let them get out of there. As you explore the grounds, you find out all sorts of things. Rothwild is getting all these security devices. Well, I mean, maybe not necessarily getting the security devices from Sokolov. That's from the City Watch, but he's got a side deal with Anton Sokolov, who is kind of the archetypal scientist who invents most of the gadgets you see. Either Sokolov or Pierre Joplin invented most of the things you see or use, I think, throughout the game. And so Rothwild has kind of a side deal going with Sokolov, where Rothwild gets new technology in exchange for allowing Sokolov to experiment on the whales. So he's got kind of a cold, calculating scientist mentality. He's not really a bad guy, but sort of in the name of science, he'll do some pretty nasty stuff. So they have a side deal going, and as a result of that, you find these various devices that you can use for yourself, like the arc mines and stuff like that. You kind of find them on the perimeter. But anyway, so by whatever means you get into the slaughterhouse, and then before you get into the slaughterhouse, you can find out an interesting little tidbit of information about Abigail Ames, which you'll find it out eventually. But I think it's kind of fun. You see this guy sitting on a little boat somewhere, on the riverfront beyond the warehouse. And if you blink over to him, he'll tell you that Abigail Ames is not all she's cracked up to be.
Right, yeah.
Like the first impression you get of her, she's the foreman. She's, persuaded all the workers to strike. She's concerned about them. She's acting in their best interest. But as it turns out, she's a double agent. Rothwild has a competitor named Ramsey, and Ramsey sent her in there to, get on with Rothwild and gain the workers' trust and cause them to strike in order to disrupt Rothwild's business. And eventually persuade all the workers to go and work for Ramsey instead of Rothwild and put him under. So she's a double agent. She doesn't really care about the workers. She just cares about, serving her own employer's interests. So they've got this plan to kind of shut down Rothwild's warehouse. And you find more about that later on. She basically wants you to help her blow up the warehouse.
Yeah.
Or, not the whaling house, not the warehouse, the slaughterhouse, sorry. But
yeah.
She wants you to help her blow the place up and kill all the butchers.
So, I don't care about the butchers. All the other workers have been evacuated, so...
I can kind of see why, man. The butchers are kind of gnarly.
They're mean.
Oh, they're mean. And basically, there are two kind of butchers. One has cleavers, and you can take those on one-on-one, just like you would anybody else. But there's this other class, these big burly guys with these circle saws that they use to chop up the whales.
Oh, yeah.
And those are some pretty nasty weapons. And basically, the only way to kill those guys is to sneak up on them from behind or neutralize them. Because if you shoot anything at them, they'll deflect it. And then if you fight them face to face, they'll just cut you up with that saw. There's no way to avoid it really or to overcome it. So you always have to kind of sneak up on them from behind. or shoot them from behind with like a sleep dart or an arrow or whatever. But yeah, they're just tough. And these guys are the guys who worked with Rothwild on the whaling ships. And so the butcher is kind of the plum job. You know, it's the best job you can get in Rothwild's hierarchy. So they got the plum jobs because they were with him from the beginning when he was on the whaling ships trying to, you know, make it big. So they're the only ones who didn't go on strike because they're the most loyal. So they're kind of maintaining basic operations. But really, later on, you hear Rothwild say, you know, the butchers aren't the brightest bulbs in the box, and so he needs the other workers to kind of do the administrative things that the butchers aren't really equipped to. If it doesn't involve cutting up flesh, the butchers aren't much good for it. It needs people to, you know, keep the books and do other things.
Exactly, yeah.
But anyway, so you get inside the slaughterhouse, right? And the first thing you see is, you know, there's this poor laborer, and these butchers are intimidating him, and unless you intervene, the big burly one with the circle saw will accidentally kill him. He's like, I'll teach you a lesson, man. And that's how they talk, too.
Yeah.
And so he kind of turns his circle saw on, but he's, you know, whether deliberately or not, he winds up killing the laborer with it. Oh, gee, I only meant to scare him. I didn't want to kill him.
I remember that.
And then the other butcher says, well, you know, he was scared just before he died. Oh, yeah. So it's macabre and comical at the same time.
Yes.
But yeah, no, so you get inside the, I keep saying warehouse. If I say warehouse, just say slaughterhouse. I don't know why I say warehouse. Because you see things stored, you know.
Yeah, it's true.
So it serves a warehouse function, but the primary function is to slaughter whales the whales are captured alive and brought to slaughterhouses and basically dismembered alive. And they're also kept alive and shocked at intervals so that they secrete more whale oil, which is where basically most of your electricity comes from in the Empire. So they're brutalized and kept alive and tortured to produce oil. And so it's really, really gnarly stuff. And you can put one out of its misery, and that plays into kind of a side quest. I guess we can discuss in a little bit. But yeah, you're in the slaughterhouse, and your basic objective is to get to the office where Rothwild is, and that's where he's got Abigail Ames. You know, he's found out that she's a double agent, and so he's getting ready to kill her, pretty much. Either sneak past the butchers, or you kill them, or you neutralize them, and eventually you get to the office. And once you get to the office, you see that Rothwild is confronting Abigail Ames, and he knows that she's working for Ramsay. And so basically he's getting ready to kill her. And the game states, but not implies, that he's not going to kill her so much as stuff her in a box and ship her up north, to the far north.
Yeah.
And so you can hoist him on his own petard as kind of the non-lethal resolution. It's like as you're exploring the slaughterhouse, there's this crate bound for the north, and it's heavily implied that that's meant for a person. You know, and it's about the size of a coffin, so it could fit a person. And, you know, who else would it be but Abigail Ames? Right? He's going to ship her off to the north and leave her to her fate. And so when you get to Rothwild, if you know this, once you find that crate, that brings up kind of the non-lethal resolution to it. So you can kind of get the information you need one of several ways. If you incapacitate Rothwild before he can lay a hand on Abigail Ames, then you can either take him to... He's got this makeshift interrogation chair somewhere in the slaughterhouse, and it's connected to a generator powered by whale oil. And he ties people to it and, you know, shocks them to coerce them into, you know, refusing to join a union or forking over information or just, you know, whatever. You know, it's just for torture and compulsion. And so you can tie him up to the chair and shock him until he tells you what you need to know about the Delilah. Then you can either kill him or stuff him in the box so that he gets shipped up north. Or you can knock out Abigail and tie her to the chair and torture her until she tells you what you want to know, because she also knows about the Delilah.
Yeah.
Or you can make a deal with her. And basically she says, I want you to turn up the pressure on all the whale oil valves and blow up the slaughterhouse. After that, my boss, Ramsay, will offer work to all the laborers who are on strike.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't care about the butchers, they can perish, you know.
Yeah.
Because they're loyal to Rothwild anyway. Or as another non-lethal method to resolve the mission, you don't necessarily have to stuff Rothwild in a box or kill him. You can just leave him tied to the chair. But if you do that, you'll see butchers trying to kill you in the next mission. So personally, I like to stuff him in the box because I think that's kind of the most interesting way to go about it.
Yeah. Like give him a taste of his own medicine.
Yeah, hoist him on his own petard, as it were. Yeah, so you can, but by whatever means you get the information. Of course, blowing up the factory is a high chaos ending because people will die.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it's a lot of fun though because you hear the announcer saying, "If you value your life, get out," or "If you value your life, run." So it kind of creates this tension that's kind of fun as you try to escape from the slaughterhouse. But by whatever means you get the information, you come to find out that the Delilah was owned by a corrupt lawyer named Arnold Timpsch. I say that because I myself am a lawyer, so corrupt. And Arnold Timpsch, at one time, like I said, was the maritime barrister, and he's the one who got Rothwild his whaling license, which was, of course, crucial for him to rise to the top of the whaling business. Now, Arnold Timpsch is the city barrister for Dunwall, and his basic role is, of course, as we talked about last time, the Empire is being devastated by the rat plague. And so when people are diagnosed with the rat plague, falsely or truly, they're shipped off to this place called the Flooded District, which is kind of a Valley of Defilement type hellhole.
Yeah.
More or less. And so Timpsch's official role is to sort of, when people are, shipped off to the Flooded District because of the plague, something has to be done with their property. And so Timpsch's role is to take their property and either give it to the next of kin or turn it over to the government. And Timpsch himself has an official document from the Lord Regent stating that he is immune from seizure of property because of the plague, which that comes into play later on if you want to get rid of him by the non-lethal means. And so, but he, as you might expect, he abuses his position and falsely accuses people of the plague, takes their property and gives it to his friends and associates to buy goodwill and advance his own interest. Oh, and he actually has an ongoing relationship with Rothwild. He sold the boat Delilah to Rothwild on the cheap. You come to find out. You don't know why at this point, but he sold the Delilah to Rothwild on the cheap, like for a quarter of its value. And then after that, the two got into business together, selling oil under the black market, which, if it were found out, would have gotten Timpsch into a lot of trouble because he was kind of getting around the kind of ban on private whale oil dealing that the Lord Regent had enacted. So it was so Timpsch was just corrupt towards everyone, even his friends.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So they're selling whale oil on the black market together and all sorts of stuff. So at this point, you know that Arnold Timpsch once owned the Delilah, and he sold it to Rothwild for a pittance. And so your next order of business is to sort of find out what that's all about. As it turns out, your assassins have been doing reconnaissance on Timpsch for some time because he's made so many enemies. It's only a matter of time before somebody wants him killed. So they've been scoping him out for a while. He's a real jerk, man. Just a piece of work. And then the next mission is called Eminent Domain because again he's taking property and under false pretenses and giving it to others. But his niche, you see, Timpsch is part of a very wealthy aristocratic family of nobility in Dunwall. His niece is one Talia Timpsch, and she hates his guts. They're bickering over the family fortune. Timpsch's mother really controls most of the family fortune, and they're disputing about her will. And anyway, she offers to tell you everything you want to know about the Delilah, but of course she wants something in exchange. You have to later. Well, at the start of the mission, you don't know what her condition is for telling you what you want to know. You just have to get to her and talk to her. And so you start on like the legal district waterfront, and then you have to kind of make your way over to sort of a little ways past the waterfront, where you find that Talia Timpsch has been captured by this gang called the Hatters. But they're just a criminal gang, and we deal more with them later on. And so you have to neutralize the Hatters, and once you do, she'll talk to you and say that she'll tell you what you want to know about the Delilah. In exchange, though, you have to sneak into Timpsch's estate and steal Timpsch's mother's will and bring it to Talia. Timpsch's mother is her grandmother. She's Timpsch's niece, and so she wants the will so that she can, take the family fortune for herself. Corrupt and greedy motives. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And so you start to do that. And then as you progress through the mission, you come to find out there are a couple ways you can go about it. Basically, your two objectives are to get the will for Talia and to neutralize Timpsch one way or another. So Timpsch is not getting out of this unscathed. Either he's going to be dead or ruined by the time you're done, and it's very satisfying to do.
Yeah.
It's like, personally, I prefer the non-lethal resolution because it's just so satisfying to watch him,
It is.
get arrested. But as you go through the mission, you come to find out that this guy named, what's his name? I have his name written down. Give me just a moment. Sorry. There's this former aristocrat. Gosh, I forget his name. And I know I've got it written down, but I just can't see it because I can't read. But there's an aristocrat that Tim basically falsely accused of plague and ruined. Roland, that's his name, Roland.
Uh-huh.
And so Roland is shipped off to the flooded district, but he sneaks back into the capital city. And he has a pretty solid plan to ruin Timsh without killing him. But before he can put the plan into motion, he is, arrested by the city watch. And they're going to either execute him or send him back to the flooded district. But they're holding him in the legal district, and if you come across him, that's what opens up the non-lethal way to neutralize Timsh. Excuse me. Sorry, I had a frog in my throat. Had to clear it. A ribbit.
You sure you don't have the plague?
I might. I'm feeling a little feverish. Brains. Because the rat plague turns you into this creature called a weeper, which is like a zombie. So I'm like, brains. Although they'll eat anything, they don't necessarily want brains.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you find Roland locked up there, and he doesn't even ask you to turn him loose. He just wants you to help him ruin Timsh. And he gives you the key to his apartment, and he tells you to go to his apartment. And there he's left a detailed journal setting forth what his plan is, and you have to put that plan into effect. And there's rewards for it because his apartment has a rune in it, and in his apartment there's a key to another apartment that has a rune in it. And for those who may not know, runes are these artifacts you collect with the Outsider's Mark, and you can use those to increase your powers, basically, acquire new powers. So I think it's worth pursuing that course at least long enough to get into the two apartments and get the runes, even if you plan to kill Timsh. So either way, so once you get into his apartment, you find out that it's basically a two-part plan. As we said before, Timsh carries around this document that immunizes him from property seizure. But Roland has forged a different document that basically says, seize this man's property as soon as you see this document. Yeah. And it's got the Lord Regent's signature forged on it, but it's so convincing that anybody would believe that it's the Lord Regent's signature. And so part of what you have to do is you have to pickpocket the real document from Timsh that immunizes him and replace that with the document calling for his property to be seized. But that alone isn't enough. Basically what it does is to seize this man's property, he's got the plague, right? But as a second part of that, you have to make it believable that Timsh might actually have the plague. So if somebody believes that Timsh has the plague and sees this document, they're going to arrest him and seize all his property, so he'll be ruined. And so to make everybody believe that Timsh has got the plague, the journal refers to this bag of really smelly stuff. It's called the odorous sack. Which, if I ever start a rock band or open a bar, that's going to be the name, Odorous Sack.
That is a good name.
Let's go to the Odorous Sack. The Odorous Sack is in concert. I don't know. So you have to basically put the Odorous Sack in the ventilation system. The place will smell just like a weeper's den, which means a den full of people who had the plague, and so that'll make it believable that he's got the plague. And quite conveniently, later in the day, Timsh is supposed to meet with General Turnbull, who is a high-ranking official in Dunwall's military. And so if the place stinks like weepers when Turnbull arrives, and you've switched out the documents, Turnbull will see that, he'll arrest Timsh, confiscate all his property, and Timsh will be left with nothing, and you'll see him in jail later on. Or you could just kill him. Whatever suits you. But anyway, you break into the Timsh estate, and not only do you find his mother's will, but you also find out that he's basically forged her will, and she's got dementia, and it could easily be cured, but he's keeping her from getting the treatment she needs to cure her dementia, so that she can't, make the will reflect what she actually wants. So he's abusing his own mother, basically.
Yeah.
The documents may or may not tell you why exactly, why you're skulking through the estate, finding things. But eventually, you'll find out that once you complete the mission and get the will back to Talia, you'll find out that Timsh was in love for a long time with this woman named Delilah, for whom he named the boat that he later sold to Rothwild. And the Timsh family, there was a bit of tension within the Timsh family because of this, because Delilah was beneath their class, And Talia herself is kind of a really snooty, kind of snobby socialite type person. And so she's like, yeah, she was beneath our class. Okay. Yeah. Quite beneath us, yes. And so she didn't really think Delilah deserved to be dating a Timsh, but, whatever. And so Talia says that, basically Delilah seduced Timsh. Timsh made Delilah. The reason Timsh was keeping his mother, incoherent and had forged the will was that he had made Delilah the beneficiary of his mother's will. So he must have fallen head over heels for Delilah.
Oh, yeah.
But shortly after he does that, Delilah very conveniently disappeared. And shortly after that, Talia got together with her friends and they had a seance, just to amuse themselves. They didn't think anything would come of it. But during the seance, they had this vision where Delilah's an artist. She's a painter. And so she was painting and she had written Dowd's name on the painting as if she anticipated a confrontation with him. So it's kind of ominous. I think you also found out that Delilah's a witch. She's interested in the occult. Basically, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't go into too much detail about her background at this point, at least till we get to the Brigmore Witches. But yeah, what we know now is that she's a witch. She seduced Timsh. Timsh made her the beneficiary of the will. Then she disappeared. At which point, Timsh became very scared of her, so scared that he sold the boat named after her to Rothwild on the cheap. So that's why he sold it for nothing. He just wanted to be rid of it because it reminded him of her. And after she disappeared, for some reason, he became scared to death of her. And you come to find out that's because she put a spell on him and possessed his body, and that kind of freaked him out a little bit.
Yeah, that would do that. That would freak someone out a little bit.
Yeah, she possessed him like a demon, basically, and that freaked him out. He got rid of the boat. All right, cool. So now you have a sense of who Delilah is, and actually, there's a point as you're skulking around the Timsh estate, you find a statue of Delilah in this secret room. And if you engage with it, it'll talk to you.
Yeah, that was creepy.
Yeah, but it's Delilah talking to you through the statue. Basically, it is really creepy. And she basically says, "Look, you need to quit. You need to quit jumping in my chili, Dowd. Or you're going to meet a bad end." As for Timsh, I don't care what you do with him. I got what I need from him, whatever. But don't you get out of my chili. Her exact words too.
Literally.
Well, really what she says is more like, big changes are coming and I'll expect you not to interfere. Very cryptic, kind of like The Outsider.
Yeah.
But it's not a long dialogue, but the statue does talk to you, and it's kind of creepy. And so, anyway, in any case, now that you know kind of who Delilah is, and now that she's threatened you to stay off her trail, naturally you want to keep probing to find out more about her.
Yeah.
Dowd is not one easily intimidated. So now that you know who Delilah is, who your adversary is, you go back to your hideout to kind of plan your next move. But, things are in disarray at your hideout because the overseers are attacking your hideout.
Oh, no.
Yeah, doggone overseers. It turns out they basically overrun the place.
Yeah.
And who greets you to tell you this depends on your chaos level. If you're high chaos, I think a guy named Thomas, who is not your second in command, but he's a pretty high-ranking assassin working for Dowd. He'll tell you that the overseers have overrun the place. They've captured several assassins, and everything is in disarray. But if you're on low chaos, Billy Lurk, who's your second in command, will meet you and tell you that the overseers have overrun the place. Either way, you find out that your basic mission is to take back your hideout. Your hideout is in the flooded district, which makes a lot of sense because no one in their right mind would go to the flooded district without a really good reason. No one's going to poke around and try to figure out that you're there. But somehow the overseers have found out that you're there. And Dowd is like the number one target because he's famous for using black magic and void magic, and that is exactly the thing that they were established to destroy. So, Dowd is the number one target. Now that they've somehow found out where your hideout is, they've overrun the place. And their leader is a real jerk named Leonard Hume. Rhymes with fume. So basically, your mission this mission is very straightforward. It doesn't have all these plot entanglements of the first two missions. It's just you take back your hideout. And to do that, you have to do two things. One, you have to neutralize Hume, and two, you have to find the assault plans. And preferably, you'll free your assassins who are basically they're like I think it's 4 assassins who are tied up. And each one is guarded by an overseer with what's called an overseer music box, and that basically produces. It's not really music at all. It sounds awful. It sounds like a constant. It sounds like a constant fart.
Yeah.
It's like someone's just like a never-ending fart. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. But what it does is it disrupts your connection to the void, so you can't use your powers. And so that's how they keep the assassins from using their powers to teleport away. They just constantly keep them under these music boxes, and so you have to neutralize those guards and free your assassins. Neutralize Hume, and then find the assault plans. Not necessarily in that order, but once you do all those things, then your assassins will band together and retake the hideout. And you can kill the overseers, or you can neutralize them. Tactically, I think it makes more sense to neutralize them, because now that the overseers know where you are, they're probably going to come back, but if you've got a bunch of captured overseers, you got leverage. But whatever, you can kill them all if you prefer to. But either way, once you do all that, when you find the assault plans, you find out that Hume did not stick to the plan. There were plans for like a larger, much more coordinated assault, but Hume saw an opportunity to capture Dowd and basically aggrandize himself.
Yeah.
So he got together a smaller band and went on ahead of the larger force, thinking that was enough.
Yeah. Basically, he ruined everything.
Yeah, he screwed up the whole thing by jumping the shark, as it were. He fired a little too quick. But yeah, so you find that out, and then once all is said and done, once the base is retaken, once Hume is neutralized and all the overseers are taken care of, you come to find out that the reason the overseers knew where your hideout was because Billy Lurk told Delilah, who then told the overseers.
Dun, dun, dun.
Betrayal.
Yeah.
And then what happens here depends on, again, your chaos level. Either way, Delilah will show up in person this time.
Yeah.
And if it's on high chaos, then the assassins will kind of gather around and they won't intervene. And Billy Lurk will fight you to the death. Not necessarily to the death, but she'll fight you for control of the Whalers. The Whalers are the names of Dowd's assassins, and they're called that because they wear these uniforms that the Whalers wear in the slaughterhouses.
Those gas masks.
Right, those creepy gas masks. Dowd himself doesn't wear the gas mask, but his assassins do. Actually, Dowd may wear it, but you never see him really in it much at all.
He's like, I'm so pretty, I gotta share this face with the world.
Oh yeah, Dowd's got a pretty face. I don't know, if you watch Berserk, there's this character named Griffith who is literally the... Or if you read the Berserk manga, there's this character named Griffith, right? He's like the most beautiful creature you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's true.
Except for Dowd. Dowd is prettier than Griffith. I'm kidding.
Confirmed.
Dowd's face looks like beef jerky. I'm just kidding. But,
Poor Dowd.
Yeah, I know. Well, I guess years of killing and black magic will kind of take a toll on a person. But
Yeah.
yeah, so found out Billy Lurk has betrayed you. And if it's low chaos, she will say, Dowd, I thought you were slipping, so I betrayed you so I could take control of the Whalers. I'm in cahoots with Delilah. If it's low chaos, though, she won't actually fight you. She'll say, I was wrong. You're not slipping. Here's my knife. You can kill me or let me go, do whatever. And so then you can choose to spare her or let her go. The canon ending, I think, is that you let her go, because Billy Lurk shows up later as the protagonist of Death of the Outsider, and she's very grateful to Dowd for letting her go and forgiving her for betraying him. But that's, years and years later. So, but, I think that has to be the canon ending.
Yeah, for sure.
But in the high chaos, she'll just fight you. And strangely enough, the powers she uses in the fight are those of a Brigmore Witch, not so much one of Dowd's people. She...
Plot twist.
Yeah, dun, dun, dun. So Delilah must have shared her magic with Billy, you come to find out. So basically, Billy's a Brigmore Witch at this point. So anyway, you fight her, and then once you... at that point, it basically becomes the final boss fight of the DLC, to fight Billy Lurk. And then once you defeat her, she's incapacitated. You can either kill her or neutralize her, but you have to neutralize her some way. Yeah. When I was playing through High Chaos, I just killed her, even though I knew that wasn't the canon ending. And then after that, that's the end of the Knife of Dunwall DLC. taking care of Billy. We've taken back our hideout. But of course, nothing's resolved at this point.
No.
And so naturally, there's another DLC.
Yes.
Called the Brigmore Witches. The Brigmore Witches got briars in their britches. I don't know. I say that. I say that because they actually do shoot briars at you, thorns. But yeah, no, the Brigmore Witches, man, is really involved. But you find out a lot of juicy stuff about the plot and Delilah and everything else. But yeah, so when the Brigmore Witch, it's interesting because like they're two separate DLCs. But I highly recommend getting both and playing through the Knife of Dunwall first, because like your abilities and your gadgets, everything will carry over. Because it'll find your save file and your chaos, everything will carry over.
And it's like a continuation lore-wise as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it picks up like minutes after the ending.
Yeah.
If you've seen the first two Halloween movies, Halloween 2 picks up like minutes after Halloween 1, and it's the same thing here. It's the aftermath of the attack. Your men are, if it's on low chaos and you spared all of the overseers, your men will start to doubt you, think you're indecisive because you spared the overseers and didn't kill them.
Yeah.
But
you can like sneak up on them and listen to them, and they're like, Dowd is really slipping, huh?
Yeah. And then Dowd justifies it as, well, look, man, they know where we are. They're going to come back, so we need some leverage, basically. So if you got a bunch of captured overseers, that's leverage to kind of keep them off your back. Which makes a lot of sense because, Hume's contingent was just a small fraction of like the overall force that was going to attack, so it makes sense to have some collateral, to kind of keep them at bay until I don't know, get a new hideout, but whatever. Yeah. So and Dowd is kind of trying to struggle through the wake of Billy's betrayal and all this stuff, but yet he still has to find out where Delilah is. One thing I forgot to mention about that seance. In the vision, Talia saw Delilah at a particular location, Brigmore Manor. And so that's where you want to go to find her. She's holed up there with her witches, plotting something. You don't know what at this point, but she's plotting something. I think you find little snippets of things that might allude to it in the Knife of Dunwall, but it never says right out what her plot is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that Delilah is at Brigmore Manor. But getting there occupies most of the DLC, because it's not in Dunwall. It's like on the outskirts of Dunwall. You have to... Basically, the only way to get to it is by boat along the Wrenhaven River. And it's in a district whose name starts with an M that I can't pronounce. I can't recall at this point. But it's like... Basically, the Brigmore family used to be aristocracy. They used to be wealthy. I think they got wealthy in the timber trade. But when whale oil started to become the big thing, the timber industry really died out. And so they lost most of their wealth. And their estate fell to others. And eventually Delilah and her witches, it became dilapidated, abandoned, and Delilah and her witches just moved in. They're squatters, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're squatting at the manor, and that's where Delilah's planning whatever it is she's got planned. And so Dowd knows he needs a boat to take him upriver to get to the manor. And, the only person, he's got all these corrupt connections, and the only person he knows who might be willing to give him a boat is this really wonderful, colorful character named Lizzie Stride.
Oh, yeah. She's pretty cool.
Oh, she's awesome.
Pointy teeth and everything.
Oh, yeah. She I think she bit a guy's tongue out once. She was on a boat, and she bit this guy's tongue out and tossed him overboard. I don't know why she did that, but,
She was probably having a bad day.
Yeah. She was in a mood.
It was a Monday.
She hadn't had her coffee yet.
Yeah, exactly.
It did have. She was out of snacks too. See, Lizzie worships the Snack Covenant. She didn't have a snack.
There you go.
So she bit the guy's tongue out. That was her snack to offer up to the Snack Covenant.
Yeah.
Poor guy. And then she tossed him overboard after that.
Yeah.
She's a colorful character, man. She got a really colorful background story too. I don't know if you want to go into that, but it's like, oh, go ahead.
Oh, we could next time.
Oh yeah, but she basically leads this gang called the Dead Eels.
Yeah.
And she has a boat. They're pirates, more or less. They go up and down the river and they rob commerce ships that go up and down the river. And by corrupt means, she got this special license that allows her to sail places that most merchants couldn't. So she has a lot of advantages, and she has a ship called the Undine. And so Dowd wants to get a hold of Lizzie and have her take him upriver on the Undine. But of course, there are some problems. Lizzie's number 2 in charge of the dead eels, a guy named Edgar Wakefield, I think is his name, has turned her over to the City Watch and betrayed her and taken over the gang. So now,
Yeah, that was not cool.
no, he's a jerk.
Yeah.
Of course, Lizzie's no paragon of moral virtue either. This is a criminal gang. But Wakefield's kind of, not only is he corrupt and ruthless, he's also kind of incompetent, as you find out. Because under Lizzie's leadership, the dead eels had solidified their control over this area called Draper's Ward, which is kind of a forsaken district. It used to be a center of high fashion. All the Calvin Kleins and the Tommy Hilfigers and the Vera Wangs of the day all ran their operations out of Draper's Ward, right? Very high fashion district.
Right.
But eventually it fell into ruin because of the rat plague. And so now there's no official presence there. It's fallen under the control of gangs. And until Wakefield's betrayal, the dead eels, the dead ears. Makes me think of in The Walking Dead, they wear these necklaces of ears. But the dead eels had total control over the district. But since Lizzie has been gone, there's gang warfare has broken out. They're fighting for control over the district with this gang called the Hatters. And we'll see more of them a little bit later on. But as you're going throughout the district, you see that the Hatters and the dead eels are fighting each other, and both will attack you at first. Yeah. So you have to kind of make your way through the district. But that's for later. But as for now, Lizzie's in Coleridge Prison, which is where obviously you escape from at the beginning of the main game as Corvo. But since Corvo's escaped, they've tightened security. So what you have to do is you have to get into Coleridge Prison and get Lizzie out, basically, so that she can give you access to her boat. So that's the object of the first mission. It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
I think this is what you did when you were streaming. If you choose to, you can purchase a favor, right, to basically have an overseer costume and go into the prison. They'll let you walk in through the front door, right?
Yeah.
Now, there are only certain places you can go or they'll turn hostile. And they make it clear, you get to go straight to the interrogation room, which is the same place they were torturing Corvo at the beginning of the first, the main game. You can go straight to the interrogation room, do your investigation, and come back. Because the pretext for that is there's been a strange incident in the interrogation room, and it looks like it smacks of the occult. And so they bring an overseer in to investigate because that's their bailiwick. They investigate black magic and things like that and try to suppress it. So you've been called in ostensibly to, I think the real overseer who was supposed to investigate, your people, kill him at some point and give you his clothes, basically. So you walk in disguised as an overseer, and they're like, "You're late. Why are you late?" And you're like, "Oh, there's some problem with the water lock." You make up some excuse.
Yeah.
And you get in. And so your basic mission is to get Lizzie out of prison by, there are obviously multiple ways you can do it. But when you're there, though, you find out that 3 guards are being executed.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they either allowed Corvo to escape, or one of them actually helped him escape. The very guard who brings you the tray of food with the key in it at the beginning of the game, he's one of the ones who's being executed. And you have to go through that area to get to the control mechanism that opens up the prison cells, I think.
No, not through that area. They're being executed in
the outside.
Yeah.
You either have or can go through there to do something. I think I
don't think you have to, but you can.
You can. That's right. Yeah, I got it. To accomplish your mission, that's one way you can go to get to the mechanism that controls the cells. But I could be misremembering.
No.
Yeah.
No, Nick.
Okay.
No.
I could be misremembering.
No, I think you're misremembering because I think you can easily miss that entire thing if you don't go through that door.
Yeah, you can. You can go through there, but you don't have to. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You're right.
Yeah, I just schooled you.
You did. I've been schooled. No. I always go through there, so maybe I just thought you had to, but you don't.
Yeah, because I remember I kind of completely missed that on I think at my very first playthrough.
Oh yeah. You actually can accomplish the mission without going through there. But I think you're better served to. Just it adds a bit of flavor to the narrative, if nothing else.
For sure.
You don't have to, but it is.
Yeah.
And there may be kind of maybe not so much a reward, but I don't know. You can save the guard who helped Corvo if you want to, but you don't have to.
You feel good afterward.
Yeah.
You're like, I did something good today.
You did. I'm a notorious assassin. I kill people for a living, but I did something good today.
Exactly.
So you can say, or you can let them die, whatever.
Or you can save them and then execute them.
You can kill them yourself.
There we go.
Like, the only reason I saved you was to kill you myself. Then you're like, what's the point? So that's one option, one little side story. And if you did the non-lethal, now this is really funny. If you did the non-lethal course for Timsh, and got him arrested, you'll find him there in the prison, and he'll be saying, he'll be basically offering bribes to the guards to let him out. And there's a notice posted on the outside of his cell, and what it says is something to the tune of, Timsh may offer to bribe you. Don't listen to him. He doesn't have any money. It's like, not because taking bribes is corrupt and unethical. Yeah. No. Not because, you're officers of the state, sworn to uphold the public trust. No. There's no point because he doesn't have any money.
He's trying to scam you.
Yeah. Because all his property was confiscated, Yeah. Because basically what's going to happen to him is I think he's going to get shipped off to the flooded district because they think he's got the plague. So a fitting end for Barrister Timsh. Yeah. Now, from his point of view, is he better off if you just go ahead and kill him or let him get shipped off to the flooded district?
That's right.
Yeah, that's debatable, I think. But of course, if you believe in an afterlife, surely he's going to hell. But that's another. He's a piece of work, as we've seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the only reason you shouldn't listen to his, so I think that implies that the City Watch, they commonly take bribes, I think. But the posted notice for anyone to see is, don't bother in this case because he doesn't have any money. So yeah, you see him there, and I guess you can kill him there if you want to, but why bother? He's in a cell, and he's he's just a broken man at this point. It's very satisfying to see. So you basically this mission is very straightforward. Not a lot of plot entanglements. Once you finally open the cell door, access the cell control mechanism. You punch in the letter because there are like 4 cell blocks: A, B, C, and D. There may be E, I forget. And then each cell is numbered, so you have to punch in like the letter for the cell block and then the number of the particular cell to open it up. You can only open up one cell at a time. And Lizzie's location will vary from like one playthrough to the next. So it's like, because part of the mission is you have to find out where she is.
Yeah, you have to find her.
And so this is something they do a lot in Dishonored. They randomize her location so that you can't just like look it up on the wiki or whatever.
Yeah, they do the same with the saves and stuff.
They do, yeah. It's going to be a different combination every time you play through it, pretty much. So you can't just Google, safe combination, warehouse, whatever.
You can, because sometimes it's like 5 combinations.
Right.
Like, it's not completely random.
It's not like one of like 999 combinations.
Yeah.
It's like one of 5 or 6. And then, actually, though, I actually looked up, to back up in the first mission in Knife of Dunwall, there's a combination in there's a safe in one of the office buildings. And I actually looked it up, and somebody purported to list all the possible combinations. I tried every one. It didn't work.
Uh-oh.
So I guess the list I found was incomplete. But yes, but you're right. There are a limited number of places, combinations, whatever. But I think that's a neat trick that they do, just to kind of force you to find the information in the game, and not just like look it up.
Yeah.
Because I think that's kind of the equivalent of running through an area in Dark Souls without exploring and finding the enemies and stuff. It's like, don't cheat, man. But yeah, anyway, I don't really think it's cheating to look stuff up online, but it's just more fun if you have to go through the mission, and I think you get more out of a game if you actually do it the way it's meant to be done. But anyway, so the last time I played through, she was in cell A00, but it could be like one of, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 different cells she could be in. So you find her, and of course you may want to open up some of the other cells because they've got items and stuff in them. Of course, there's an ability that lets you kind of pull stuff from a distance, and so that saves a lot of time. Anyway, so once you get to Lizzie, she's at, if you're a bondage fetishist, you'll kind of enjoy it when when you find Lizzie, because she's like chained up in this like this weird mechanism. It's almost like back in the day, people were suspected of being witches. They would put them in the stocks, back in Salem. It's kind of like that. Only she's on her knees. She's locked up in this kind of stock device, and then you have to. She'll make a deal with you, to get her out. But then as soon as you unlock the device, she just collapses. She can't walk. she goes unconscious because they've been torturing her and interrogating her for however long. So you have to carry her out of the prison. But it's a little bit tricky because once you get outside, your powers are nullified because that overseer music is playing on the outskirts of the prison. And as far as I know, there's no way to stop that. But they're just playing that music because they were interrogating a Brigmore witch in the interrogation room. That's an interesting little bit of side story. So they captured a Brigmore witch. I forget what her name was. Started with an M, I think. And they took her to the interrogation room. And for some reason, the music wasn't playing in the interrogation room, but just on the outskirts of the prison. I don't get why that is.
Yeah, that's weird. They should have it like blasting in the entire thing.
Oh, absolutely.
24/7.
Yeah. I mean, if the witch is inside, and the purpose of the music is to suppress the witch's power, or maybe it was playing in the room at the time, I don't know, but then that wouldn't explain what happened because they were interrogating her, torturing her, and then all of a sudden, there's this big kind of supernatural explosion and everybody in the room dies, including the witch. And that is the incident that the overseer's been called in to investigate. So that's the pretext for you getting into the prison as an overseer. Anyway, so you have to sort of carry Lizzie outside and, surprise, surprise, you have to go through the sewers to get out. These missions often have you going through the sewers. So once you get her out of there and go through the sewers and she wakes up, you say, "Hey, Lizzie, how about you let me use your boat?" And she's like, "Well, I've been betrayed and I don't have control of the gang anymore and Wakefield is holed up on my boat."
Yeah.
And so guess what your mission is? You have to go to you have to go to Draper's ward, and again, this mission is very straightforward. But it's straightforward in terms of plot. At least the first half is. But I think this is maybe the longest and most involved mission in the whole DLC. It's called the Dead Eels, and your basic goal is to reestablish Lizzie as the head of the Dead Eels and get the boat working so she can take you upriver to the Brigmore Manor. So it comes in two steps. One is to get rid of Wakefield, and number two is to repair the boat because their boat is missing a key component. Yeah. So getting rid of Wakefield is pretty straightforward. You start on kind of the waterfront, and you have to go into. Or do you start on the waterfront? You so often start on the waterfront that I just think you do with every mission, but not necessarily. You have to go into Draper's ward. And the two gangs, the Dead Eels and the Hatters, are at war with each other over control. And at this point, the Hatters are gaining the upper hand. They've got new leadership, but you don't know it. The guy in charge of the Hatters they call him the Geezer, but his name is Mortimer Hat, hence the name the Hatters. And he is old as Methuselah, pretty much. He's over 100 years old, and he's in charge of the Hatters. They're at war with the Eels, and they've gotten access to Sokolov's security technology and other things, and so they're clearly got the upper hand in the gang warfare. But they're fighting in the streets, and so both sides will attack you as soon as they see you. Even though you're trying to help the Eels, they don't know that. They'll just attack you.
Yeah. They don't ask questions.
No, they don't. Not at all. We don't ask questions. We just kill. And you find all sorts of things as you're kind of skulking around trying to make your way, to the boat. You come across this place called the Textile Mill, and you need a password to get in, which you won't get until much later. So there's no real reason to waste time trying to get into the Textile Mill at this point. The game won't let you until you complete the first half of the mission and get rid of Wakefield. But so you make your way around. You come across a couple of people who are kind of interesting. One is a black market seller named Jerome who will sell you like potions and weapons and whatnot. And he'll also have a side quest for you. He'll ask you to assassinate somebody named Skinflint in exchange for like 50 coin, which is hardly worth the trouble, but you can do it. Or you can accept the mission and lie and say you killed Skinflint and he'll still pay you. So
yeah.
Kind of a dupe. I guess Dow's reputation is such that he'll believe you, even if you didn't.
Sure.
But yeah, and he'll also sell you stuff. There's another guy. He used to be the royal tailor, basically. He designed dresses for, Jessamine and maybe even her father before her, the emperor who preceded her. But then he got arthritis and wasn't able to fashion dresses anymore. But even after that, the royal family took care of him because they regarded him as a friend. They even gave him a lock of Emily's hair, That's kind of a keepsake. It's just kind of a weird thing to give somebody, a lock of your daughter's hair, but
But this is Dishonored. Maybe this is normal.
Yeah, I mean, who are we to judge somebody else's culture,
Yeah, there we go.
So whatever. So they gave him a lock of Emily's hair as kind of it's meant to be a really sentimental gift to show that he's a friend of the royal family.
Uh-huh.
But one night, of course, he's living in this decrepit Draper's ward now because everything's kind of gone to spit.
Yeah.
But if you get into his apartment, he will tell you that not too long ago, Delilah appeared to him in his apartment, incapacitated him with magic, put these weird witchcraft symbols all over his apartment, and stole the lock of Emily's hair.
Yeah.
That's kind of a key plot point for later, but you're like, why would Delilah need a lock of Emily's hair? She must be doing some witchy stuff.
Yeah.
Because she's a witch, Well, yeah, so she gets the lock of Emily's hair and leaves. Of course, she doesn't kill the guy, which I guess is magnanimous of her. But yeah, so she leaves him there, and so that's kind of, you're like, huh? She got the hair now. So you run around and you eventually get to the boat, and the boat is it's like a fortress. So there are eels everywhere, all of whom will kill you one sight. And so there are a couple ways to get inside the boat. Most people probably take the hatch underneath the boat. I didn't. I just kind of go in directly and either kill or choke everybody out. Because I really hate swimming because those hagfish are always nipping at you. And
oh my god, I agree. Yeah. And there's no way to get rid of them other than to run away or to blink.
Yeah, I mean,
swim away, I guess.
Like if they're in like a little pond, you can kind of shoot them with arrows and kill them. But in the ocean, I mean, it's almost impossible to get rid of them. And they take they do a lot of damage too with every bite. It's ridiculous. So for that reason, I don't like to swim any more than I have to because of the stupid hagfish. They're these great big, they're like piranhas basically, these great big fish with these sharp teeth that they bite you. And to insult you, sometimes people will call you a hagfish. It's like, come out, you hagfish, I'm going to kill you, you hagfish. But anyway, however you do it, you get onto the boat. You can actually talk to Wakefield before you neutralize him. And he'll tell you one lie after another about the situation. You don't believe a word he says.
Nah.
And you can either kill him or choke him out or neutralize him some way. And once you do, Lizzie will come and reassert control over the dead eels. And she's like, a lot of you guys betrayed me, but it's okay. I'm magnanimous. But the following people owe me a finger. And she'll list off all these people. And as she calls out names, you'll see people, oh man, like, oh no, it's like the Yakuza, you fail, you have to give a thumb, so the following people owe me a finger. And so I guess, they're lucky she didn't have him killed for siding with Wakefield.
Yeah.
But from that point on, the eels won't attack you at least. So that's good.
At least that's a good thing. Yeah.
And so Dowd is like, okay, Lizzie, how about we take this boat upriver? She's like, well, I would, but the boat's not working. What do you mean the boat's not working? Well, that knucklehead Wakefield, somebody snuck in and stole the engine coil from the boat. Well, couldn't you buy another one? Nah, I can't buy another one. They don't make this kind of engine coil anymore. How convenient. So, Dowd, you have to sneak into the textile mill where the Hatters are holed up. That's their headquarters, the textile mill.
Right, yeah.
And here's the password. Wait, you have the password to get into your rival gang's headquarters? Yeah. Sure, why wouldn't I?
Yeah, everyone does.
Everybody has the password except for Dowd.
There we go, yeah.
There's actually some good story behind that. Let's say there are two accounts for how she got the password. If you ask her, she'll say that she tortured a member of the Hatters and got the password. But later on, you come to find out that if you ask Mortimer Hatt, he'll say that he just gave it to her because he wanted her to come see him. So there's a relationship between Lizzie and Hatter. Harvey Smith came out and said that basically Mortimer Hatt is her father. The game heavily implies it, but doesn't state it outright. But Harvey Smith's like the creative director for Dishonored. He comes up with the plot, basically. So I guess if he's like Miyazaki saying something about Dark Souls, if it came from the mouth of God, as it were, then it would be from Harvey Smith. Kind of like anything J.K. Rowling might say about Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So Harvey Smith has come out and said that the leader of the Hatters is also Lizzie's father. So that's the deal. But however she got it. And so you make your way back to the textile mill, you give them the password, they'll let you in. And as soon as you get past that door, you're in like the outer perimeter of the textile mill. And the reason they're holed up in the textile mill, though, is that the way they're supporting themselves now is that they're actually manufacturing the sheets that they wrap up the bodies of plague victims in. So it's kind of a macabre way to earn money, but it works. So basically they're manufacturing the body bags for the plague victims. And, since there are so many plague victims, it's kind of a booming business. We're in the plague business, and business is booming. So you kind of have to sneak into the textile mill. You come to find out that the leader of the Hatter gang he's ancient. He's very old. And he's decrepit at this point. He's confined to a chair, and he's constantly hooked up to these life support devices. And the person taking care of him is called William Trimble. Everybody calls him Nurse Trimble. Yeah. And Nurse Trimble's really the one in charge of the Hatters at this point. He's just claiming to speak for, the geezer, old man Hat. He's got him hooked. Turns out Trimble's a scientist who studied at the Academy of Natural Philosophy with Pierre Joplin, who is the guy who makes all our stuff for us in the main game. Really funny story.
About how he got kicked out.
Yeah, he got kicked out of the university.
Or he left,
he and Pierre Joplin, each one of them had ideas on how to prolong life indefinitely, right? And so they got into such heated arguments about this subject that they agreed to have a pistol duel to the death, right?
Yeah.
Think a duel in the Old West at high noon in the city streets. You see a tumbleweed roll on by, and people are kind of looking out their windows as the gunfighters are taking their stances and getting ready to shoot each other.
Yeah.
Except these guys are academics. They're not
very good with guns.
Marksmen. So it's like each one shoots at the other several times, and neither one manages to land a shot. It's like pow.
Oh no, Nick! Your voice disappeared. Okay.
Hello. Hello.
Oh! It's back. It's
excellent.
back. Perfect.
Excellent.
I think it must have been an internet thing, because.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe it was.
But it's fine because we were still recording.
But yeah. So Joplin and Trimble are shooting at each other. They empty their guns. Right. Neither one lands a shot. So eventually they just give up. So they decide to settle it by coin toss, right?
Yes, right.
And Trimble loses the coin toss and has to leave the academy.
Yeah.
So it's because of his knowledge of science that they are able to acquire all the Sokolov security technology, and because the textile mill is a fortress, man. It's got walls of light. It's got all these things. So you have to kind of get past that, and you're basically trying to find the engine coil. And what you find out is that the engine coil is in the mechanics room, or the mechanical room. And there's only one way in, and you need the key to get in, or the combination. Actually, you need the combination to get in. And ostensibly, only Trimble knows the combination, but actually 2 other people do. The geezer himself knows the combination, Old Man Hat. And a dead guy knows the combination, a guy named Pete, who's actually the head mechanic, I guess, for the Hatters. He knows the combination. He's dead, but he left the combination in his apartment. So if you can find his apartment and get in, you can get the combination because he's written it down. And so you can bypass a lot of stuff if you do that, but I don't recommend that because you can get a lot of good items and stuff if you play out the full mission. Aside from Pete and finding the combination in his apartment, there are 2 ways to get it. You can make a deal with Trimble, or you can make a deal with the geezer himself. One is low chaos, one is high chaos. Because Trimble has the geezer hooked up to all this life support stuff, and he's got it rigged so that if the geezer's life support system fails for any reason, all this poison gas will fill the place and kill everybody. But if you're going to make a deal with the geezer, that's exactly what you have to do. You have to shut off his life support. I think it's powered by a whale oil tank, and so he wants you to disconnect the whale oil tank so that he can die. Of course. Yeah,
because I think the nurse was either experimenting on the geezer or sort of keeping him alive through experimentation.
That's exactly. He was experimenting on ways to prolong life indefinitely, and so the geezer was his guinea pig. But he's so old that if he's disconnected from life support for moments, he'll die.
Yeah. So the geezer's like, "Kill me, please.
Please kill me.
Take this." Yeah.
And so, he's like, but if I do that, everybody will die. And so, if you're going to do that, what you have to do is there are these ingredients for an antitoxin that will immunize you from the poison. Trimble takes it every day, but for you to benefit from it, you have to find the recipe, find the ingredients, which are kind of scattered around.
Yeah.
I think it may give you clues as to where they are. I'm not sure.
I think so.
But once you find the ingredients, there's this mixer in Trimble's lab, and you put the ingredients in there, and it'll spit out the antitoxin. You can take it, and then you'll be immune. Because if you don't take the poison and you kill the geezer, you'll die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you make
the whole area becomes poisonous, so you have to make it to the exit
Right.
door, not just the door out of the building.
according to the wiki, it's theoretically possible to get out of there without using the antitoxin.
Oh yeah. I
did?
did. It's like you can get out of there. I activated the thing, and then I slowed time, and then I blinked.
Oh,
and
yep,
fell
that's
out
how
of
you do
there.
it.
Well, slowing time.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
So it is possible. I've never done it, but it is possible. So, professional, brilliant strategist, right?
Yeah, there we go. It's because I couldn't be bothered to figure out the recipe, so I'm
I'm
like,
just gonna
whatever.
slow time, and that's the way the wiki says to do it too. It's like you slow time, and then you just blink like crazy to get out of it. And then when you blink too, it kind of stops time, but you have to have time stopped in between
Yeah.
blinks, or you'll die like the second
Oh,
you
yeah.
breathe that stuff.
Exactly. And then after I exited, I tried to go back in, and the poison killed me. So I don't know if you can ever return to that area after that.
Yeah, exactly. You basically locked yourself out of the area, and it's a
Yeah,
place worth
exactly.
exploring too because it has a lot of good items and stuff. I think it may have some runes and stuff too. I don't remember if it does, but most places do. Anyway, so that's the deal you make with the geezer, is to kill him and everyone who works for him. Now, it won't kill Trimble because he takes the antitoxin every day, just in case someone tries to kill the geezer.
Yeah.
And that kind of keeps the men in line too, so one of them doesn't try to kill the geezer and take over the gang.
Oh yeah.
So Trimble is really the one controlling things, and with his leadership, they're really asserting themselves and taking over the district. But anyway, you can also make a deal with Trimble one thing I forgot to mention was if you want to talk to the geezer and make a deal with him, you have to get Trimble out of the room because Trimble almost never leaves his side.
Yeah.
So you can, neutralize Trimble on the spot. Or you can go upstairs to his lab and set off this alarm. And whenever he hears that alarm, he'll go up to his lab. And that's a way to get him out of the room and distract him. That's only temporary, though. You only have so much time. Unless you neutralize him up in the lab, which I did. I just kind of knocked him out upstairs in the lab and went to talk to the geezer. So once you get Trimble out of there, that's when you can talk to the geezer and make a deal with him. But he won't make a deal with you when Trimble's there, obviously.
Yeah, and Trimble keeps being like, "Hey, don't talk to him. Don't talk to him."
And if you try enough times, he'll turn hostile and you'll have to kill him or neutralize him.
Yeah.
Which if you do that, forget about low chaos. Unless you get in with Pete's combination. Which I did when I was on low chaos. I just used Pete's combination and knocked out Trimble and didn't bother to kill the geezer either. So. But yeah, so if you making the deal with Trimble is the most involved way, I think, to get the code. He'll say, "Look, the reason we stole the engine coil is because the mill isn't working anymore. The water mill that powers the place. So you can have the combination. You can have the engine coil if you can get the water mill working again. And so to do that, guess what? You have to go down into the sewers where the mill's engine or the system that powers the mill is. And that's a whole big process. You go down in there, and there are Brigmore Witches sort of all over the place because they've been kind of keeping tabs on you the whole time. Every now and again, you'll see one for a second, and she'll disappear. They're kind of watching you. And so they're down there in the sewer, and you're running around trying to find out what's wrong with the engine coil and how to fix it. And eventually you'll see this really strange-looking woman claiming to be injured there in the sewer, very out of place. She's got like these vines all over her, and she's pale. I mean, it's a witch, obviously. But she'll say, "Oh, Dowd, help me! I'm a damsel in distress." And if you fall for it, two more witches will appear, and you'll have to fight them. Because there are these other two witches hiding off in the distance, so you could take them out before you get there. It's like you can see them with your enhanced vision, while they're hiding there. So you have to deal with that, and you have to deal with some other witches. And it comes to find out that what's keeping the mill from working is that one of the witches' powers is they can shoot these thorns at you, and one of those thorns is stuck in the gears, which is what's preventing the mill from working. So you fix that, you get the mill working, and then Trimble will give you the code to get into the engine room and get the coil. And so however you get the coil, and then you get the boat working again. And Lizzie gives you the honor of, activating the boat, and she'll take you upriver to Brigmore Manor.
Right.
So after all that, we finally get to Brigmore Manor. And that part is really straightforward. You basically you need to get into the manor and you need to neutralize Delilah. So that part of it straightforward. But it's difficult because there are these witches everywhere, and these aren't city watch guys that just try to shoot you and cut you. I mean, they can teleport. They have these sonic screams that can knock you back. Yeah. They shoot things at you. And they make these vines come up out of the ground that can lift you up off the ground telekinetically, kind of like the push power, I guess. And so it's really involved. You're better off to stealth kill them if you can.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And they have these like weird dogs that you see these hound skulls on the ground. And then if you don't destroy them, like they'll materialize into these dogs that will attack you over and over.
These are like Dark Souls type dogs. They're so annoying.
No, they are. They're annoying. And if you kill them, they'll keep coming back until you smash their skull. So the best way to take them out is to like shoot the skull with an arrow from a distance. At least that's the way what I try to do most of the time. Or if I have to fight one and kill it, I'll crush the skull right away. Because otherwise they'll just keep coming back. And one of your assassins will eventually tell you this. In case you couldn't figure it out. I mean,
listen, Dowd, I know you're a professional assassin, but here's a tip.
In case you couldn't figure it out, you have to smash the skulls. Of course, there are favors you can purchase to help you get in. One is really annoying though. There's like a turncoat witch who will help you get into the manor. But she's still loyal to her fellow witches, but she's not loyal to Delilah. Yeah. So you have to talk to her, and she'll kind of give you some helpful information to get into the manor. But if you talk to her when other witches are around, she'll just attack you like any other witch.
Yeah.
So it's really frustrating, right? To get her like off by herself, so that you can talk to her. Because she's usually like with the other witches who are patrolling, the grounds. But anyway, she's in a distinctive kind of red jacket, so you can tell her apart, but it's just really annoying trying to get her off to herself to kind of...
Red jacket, you say? It's funny, we just recorded a whole podcast with Richie, how the only person in the universe to wear red is Slave Knight Gale.
Right?
That's why people know it's him whenever it's like the red hooded guy.
That's right. No, yeah, it's like, the red hood has come to eat us!
Yeah, exactly, and you know exactly who he is. Do you think she's trying to basically make herself famous by wearing red, so that people associate her with Gale?
It must be. I can't think of another explanation.
There's no other explanation. Okay. Yeah.
Well, she's a witch. She wants dark powers, and what's darker than the dark soul, right? So
there we go.
She wants to get in Gale's circle and take the dark soul from him. Because Gale,
hungry.
Gale has eaten the dark soul. She wants to eat Gale, I guess, to get the dark soul.
Oh my god! Maybe that's Dark Souls 4.
Confirmed. The Brigmore Witch in the red jacket has eaten Gale, and now she has the dark soul. I love it.
That makes just about as much sense as the Ring City. Yeah.
Honestly, the video you did on the Ring City before the podcast era was just excellent, I thought.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't have a clue about... Like, the Ring... I love it in terms of gameplay, but in terms of the story, I was just totally confused. Why are these statues... What are these statues of Koth everywhere? Why is anything here? I don't understand anything.
It's okay. Dark Souls was almost entirely improvised, so it's okay not to understand.
Yeah. No, but your video made it make a lot of sense. So
it makes sense because it's actually quite inaccurate. There's no way to make sense of the Ring City.
It's like it makes perfect sense once you realize it doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
I mean, I love it in terms of the gameplay. It's hard as heck, but I love it. But just in terms of the lore, I don't know. I couldn't follow it until your video, which made it make a lot more sense. But anyway, I digress.
Back to the Red Witch.
We're back to Witch Gale. What? Still here? Yeah, so she'll give you some helpful info if you buy the favor and manage to get her away from her fellow witches. There's also another way. There are several ways to get into the manor. Like you start on the outskirts, right? Or not the outskirts, but like the perimeter, and you have to find a way inside, and that's pretty involved. Like you can go through this crypt, kind of a secret entrance to get in, and I think there's a bone charm or a rune there to kind of incentivize you to go that way. But however you get in. And once you're inside the manor, you have to kind of find out what Delilah's up to and how to stop her. And eventually you come to find out that, among those who have received the Outsider's Mark, she has some very unique gifts. One of which is, she can do magic through her paintings. She started as a painter, Well, she's like an estranged member of the royal family. She was Jessamine Caldwell's like stepsister or half sister, like the illegitimate daughter of Jessamine's father, the emperor that came before her. And she was never really acknowledged as a princess. And eventually they kicked her out because Jessamine, they were both children. Jessamine broke something really valuable and Delilah took the blame for it. So they punished her and cast her out along with her mother. The mistress, I guess, of the prior emperor. So she was really bitter and she came up through the ranks painting. Got in league with Sokolov, got in league with the big aristocrats until they found out she was all obsessed with the occult, and so they kind of ostracized her. And that's when she fell in with Timpsh and, the rest we've talked about. She could do magic through her paintings, and there's this big elaborate ritual in which she can paint a picture of a person. And if she does the ritual right, and I guess has an artifact from that person, like their hair, for example, which is why she needed Emily's hair, she can actually project herself into the painting, project herself into the person, and possess the person's body, basically. And so her plan was, because Emily was the rightful heir to the throne, Delilah was going to perform this big ritual and enter into Emily through the painting and basically rule as Emily. And she planned on having a lot of people executed when she took over. And and so Delilah's both times that Delilah is defeated in this universe, it's because she's an obsessive journalist. Every thought in her head, she writes it down somewhere. And so you find all these notes that kind of tell you what the ritual is and how it works and how to...
It's like her private diary is just like all over the place.
Yeah. And they say
It's like they didn't have Twitter back then, so that's it.
That's right. So that was kind of social media in Dunwall. You just write everything down. I think most of the characters are this way. They write everything down. Of course, I realize it's for the gameplay so you can find clues, but everybody's a really good writer and everybody's a really obsessive journalist in Dunwall. Especially Delilah.
Especially, yeah.
So because of her writings, you find out what the ritual is, how to foil it. And the ritual's taking place in the void. Eventually, what you find out is that Delilah has actually transported herself to the void to consummate this ritual. Because I guess that's where the connection with the magic is strongest, And so it's this elaborate ritual, and you find out that you can do one of two things to stop her. You can kill her, or you can sabotage the ritual. And there are a couple ways to sabotage the ritual. There's more than one painting at the ritual site in the void. So basically, if you switch the painting and she performs the ritual, she'll be trapped inside that painting and won't be able to possess Emily's body. The painting is of like this big tree. Well, I'm actually kind of glossing over some stuff. The painting is of this big tree in the void, right? And so if you switch out the painting and she does the ritual, or you do the ritual on that painting, she'll be trapped basically in the void. Theoretically for all eternity, although we know she comes back later. So however you decide to do it, if you kill her, her spirit will be lost in the void and come back later, or if you just sabotage the ritual, she'll be trapped in the other painting. But it's a really cool climax. Once you go into the void, you can do it. You can do it all stealth. You can stealthily switch the paintings, and she'll do the ritual, and she'll trap herself, or you can kind of take the direct approach. And if she sees you, or if one of the several statues of her that are lining the perimeter see you, it'll trigger this big fight. And so all the statues of Delilah will come alive, and you'll have to fight basically 5 or 6 clones of Delilah. And once you neutralize all those don't count as kills, I think, for purposes of chaos, because they're just, these phantom clones of her. So you neutralize them, and then that basically neutralizes her. Once you get rid of her clones, she will sort of go up to the painting of Emily, and she'll just stand there and say, "Oh, you're never going to beat me. She took everything from me. I deserve this." She'll just be whining about how you foiled her plan.
Yeah.
And so you can kill her there, or you can knock her out. If you knock her out and put her on this little altar that she set up for the ritual, and if you switch the painting, then Dowd himself will perform the ritual, and she'll be sucked into the painting and trapped into the void.
And then she'll wake up in the painted world of Ariandel.
Yep. Then she'll have to fight Frida.
There we go.
And of course, she'll try and fail at that for all eternity, because it's a really tough boss fight.
Yeah, but Nick, what if she's Frida?
Confirmed. She's sucked into the painting, and she doesn't, and she wants it. She doesn't want it to burn up because that's her new home.
Yeah, there we go.
She wants it to rot, and so she convinces Ariandel to choose rot over fire, and the rest is history.
That's right.
Well, that's really one of my favorite endings to a DLC. I think is the way you I always sabotage the ritual because it's just fun. It's such fun to see her get sucked into the painting. You know,
it's like karma.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's like, and her face and her voice, it's really well acted, I think, because you can see the determination. She's like, I'm going to rule everything. She holds on for dear life, and for a second, you think she might actually hold on and not get sucked in. Yeah. But then finally, she gets sucked into the painting. And then the assassin Dowd has saved the day.
Yay! True hero.
Woohoo! Because then what happens after this depends on your chaos level. As we discussed in the main game, as Corvo, you can kill Dowd or not. And if you play through the DLC on high chaos, then Corvo will kill you after all this. Because he doesn't know that you've saved Emily and done all this good stuff. He only knows that you killed the Empress and ruined his life. So naturally, he's a little cranky.
Yeah.
So if you play through on high chaos, Corvo will kill you.
Yeah.
And if you play through on low chaos, Corvo will spare you. He may smack you a little bit, but he'll spare you.
Yeah.
So it's possible to have an ending in the DLC that diverges from what you do in the main game. Because you can kill him as Corvo and then play through low chaos on the DLC, and Corvo will spare him. So, but of course, the canon is that Corvo spares him because you see Dowd later on, much later on, like in the books and stuff. But yeah, no. So that's the DLC, and I hope it made sense because I felt like we might have jumped around a lot, but I hope that made sense.
Nick, that was awesome.
Woohoo!
So we did it. So we covered the game. Now we covered the DLCs.
Yep.
So next time we talk, we'll just have to cover Dishonored 2.
Heck yeah.
And then Death of the Outsider. And after we'd covered all the games, we can go into details. This is your life now, Nick. Welcome to the Richie Club.
Woohoo! I'm in good company though, Richard. I'm actually quite honored to, I guess, have this one-on-one podcast and talk about Dishonored in that semi-coherent manner.
Thanks so much for coming on and explaining Dishonored to us again.
No, absolutely. These are great games. One of my favorite franchises. It's got a really good story to it. I'm thinking about reading the novels because those fill in a lot of the stuff that happens in between the games.
Yeah, you're a lawyer. You're not a reader.
That's right. I don't read and write for a living.
Well, again, Nick, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anytime. This was great. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I hope this explanation kind of made sense.
And Nick, you have a YouTube channel and a Twitter. Can you tell us where we can find it?
Yes. My YouTube channel is Cynde Thief. I stream there on occasion and post random videos as the mood strikes me. And Twitter, same name, Cynde Thief. That's where I post all of my gaming stuff, distinct from my personal account, which theoretically should be for professional stuff, but we're not. To call myself professional, I guess, would be a misnomer, so it's not what it's actually used for.
And thief is spelled. No, well, is it Cinder or thief that's spelled different?
No, Cinder is spelled with a Y.
There we go. Yeah.
See, at the time, I forgot that Cinder was a character in the Spyro franchise, and it's spelled with a Y. I totally forgot. So anytime you type in CYNDER, that's what's going to pop up in Google. Is like Cinder the Dragon, Spyro. I was going to do it the proper spelling, but it wasn't unique in Google. Like Cynde Thief with an I was actually not unique in Gmail. So other people had that name. So I spelled it with a Y just to kind of get the unique name in Gmail.
Or maybe you could have thought of something a little more original.
Maybe I could have. I don't know. But I'm a lawyer, though.
This is as original as a lawyer gets, okay?
We can't do math, and we're totally unoriginal.